Well, thank you, everyone, for being here this afternoon. The verdict that we received at the end of the last week was hard to receive for us. Immediately, my thoughts went to the Steinle family and how they must have felt. I happen to be a father, and I can't even imagine what the Steinles are going through. And that was something that was always very present for me, and I know that was very present for my staff during this entire period. I also immediately thought about Diana Garcia, the assistant district attorney who put in hundreds of hours in this case with the rest of our legal team in order to present this case in a coherent fashion using her training and experience. I also thought about the San Francisco residents and how they may be feeling. I said last week that this was not a verdict we hoped for. We believe this was a homicide, and we continue to say so. After the police arrested Mr. Garcia Zarate, we reviewed the evidence in this case as a team. Literally over 100 years of legal experience handling homicide cases, collectively hundreds of homicide cases, went into the review of this case and the way that this case was presented. We presented this case in court for arraignment, and we presented this case at a preliminary hearing. At each of the stages, judges review our charges, and at the preliminary hearing, the judge heard evidence about the crime, and he felt that there was sufficient evidence for us to proceed with our prosecution. We presented the case to the jury, and after entering all the evidence, the judge in the trial felt that there was sufficient evidence to instruct the jury on multiple theories of homicide, including first-degree murder. The case went to the jury, and they came up with a different conclusion. This happens sometimes. It's never easy. Because there are still legal matters pending in this case, I am unable to discuss the details of this case. I have an ethical duty to protect the judicial process and do not want to compromise our efforts in the courtroom. If there was any failure in the preparation and presentation in this case, the responsibility is mine and mine alone. The homicide team in my office worked tirelessly on this case, and I hope that their hard work is appreciated, even if they were not able to secure a guilty verdict. I have intentionally refrained from commenting much on this case. From the day the murder happened, this case has been used as a political stunt. It pained me to watch politicians and candidates use the tragedy of this event for political gain. The Steinle family themselves has commented over and over on the difficulty of watching their daughter's death being thrown around to advance political agendas and careers. Seeing all this, I was circumspect about speaking too much on this case before, during, and after the trial. I did a handful of interviews last week, but did not feel that a press conference was appropriate. I felt the focus should be about the Steinle family and not me or my office. I was heartened by the kind words the Steinle family spoke about our office, the efforts we put in supporting them. We will continue to protect their well-being in every possible way. I wanted to speak today because I want to thank the Steinle family for their grace during what is surely one of the most difficult things a family can go through. I wanted to thank the people of my office who worked so hard in this case And I wanted to thank you, our community, for understanding what we did. What we did was our absolute best to protect their safety. We appreciate their support. It is important in times like this to remind ourselves that the vast majority of immigrants are law-abiding members of our community. I have been proud of our city's response to this verdict and continue to do so. I am now available for any questions that you may have.
All right, Mr. Gascon.
I will get everyone, so I'm not going to run away from you guys. Yes.
There's been a lot of criticism over the last couple of days of the first-degree murder charges that were argued during trial. Strategically, going back, do you think that was a mistake to charge this case the way you did?
Well, first of all, let's, to clarify the legal process here, there were no degrees charged. This case was charged with murder. During the presentation of the case, testimony and evidence came up that the court felt that it was appropriate to give first-degree instructions, and that was done, as well as second-degree and as well as involuntary manslaughter. Interestingly enough, some people have questioned why did we use the brandishing part on the involuntary manslaughter, and the reason for it is that actually we could not have alleged a lawful act that was done in a lawful manner, because that is only available for vehicular manslaughters. So in this particular case, we had to show brandishing in order to support our involuntary manslaughter. And I apologize that some people have put out some information that is inaccurate.
The case was charged as murder and not first-degree murder initially, but it seemed like throughout the trial she was arguing for second-degree murder, and it wasn't until the very end that she argued for first-degree murder.
The theory of our case was always an implied malice case, which leads to a second-degree murder. As the trial progressed and there was additional evidence that was presented, the court agreed and felt that there was sufficient evidence to provide jury instructions on a first-degree murder, and we agreed to do so. But we have always worked on an implied malice case. Let me come here and then I'll come back to you.
Well, I have actually two questions. Do you think had you gone for the involuntary manslaughter, and I know you explained it a little bit, you would have been more successful? And then I have a follow-up.
But we did. That was one of the charges that we brought in. We provided jury instructions on first-degree murder, second-degree murder, and involuntary manslaughter, as well as a felon in possession of a firearm. The jury found them not guilty of first-degree, second-degree, or involuntary manslaughter. They found him guilty of a felon with a gun.
Could I also ask you about the sentencing? Are you going to ask for the maximum?
Well, this is still a process that is ongoing. I don't want to speculate because, again, as I indicated earlier, I don't want to talk about the case. This is still a pending legal proceeding.
Garcia Zarate's previous criminal history did not come into the courtroom. He had been convicted of 7 felonies, not non-violent felonies. But do you think that puts you at a disadvantage, not being able to bring that to the jury? It strikes at the heart of his credibility, some might argue.
We follow the law. We have an ongoing proceeding, but more importantly, the way that evidence may be presented or not is not something that we're going to discuss.
Did you try to get that admitted into court?
I'm not going to get into the stuff. I can't discuss that because it could taint some of the other
Right, I have a
work.
follow-up as well.
Yeah.
As you know, the city has become a punching bag for certain GOP activists. President Trump has tweeted about this numerous times. What message do you have for those who really criticize this order?
Well, I think that the message that I have, number one, is that the jury did their work, and we respect their work. We may disagree, but we respect their work. And I think it's important for the President of the United States to remember that this is a nation of laws. And part of being a nation of laws is that we respect the legal process, even when the outcome is one that we may be unhappy with. Those that are wishing or those that are using this for political benefits, attacking San Francisco in San Francisco values, I only say that this is an incredible city. I stand for what the city stands for. I'm very proud of being a member of this community. And in this case, as any other case, we handle it as we would handle a criminal case that is presented to us. Precisely the reason why I was avoiding doing some of this is because I don't want to engage in the political football that has become part of this case, which I think is so offensive to the Steinle family. When you listen to that family say how pained they are by so often seeing the photo of Kate in the media being used for purposes that are so dishonorable, and we wanted to make sure that we were not part of that. I think most of you, by the way, know that I'm not media shy and that I respond to you guys. I was not ducking the media. We were just really trying to be very circumspect.
George?
Yeah.
It seemed to me that the ricochet evidence was pivotal in this case, coming on the heels of the prosecution's case that the gun was pointed at her. Do you see it that way?
Look, I can't get into the details of the case. I don't want to get into attacking the jury and their decision. We disagree, obviously, with their decision, but we respect their decision. We felt, and we still do, that we had evidence of a murder case. If we had a similar case presented to us today, and I hope that we don't, we would proceed very much the same way that we did in this case. Yes. I'll get to you.
You talked a little bit about it, but this whole idea of, the hashtags boycott San Francisco and San Francisco being soft on crime. I know you've spoken recently about San Francisco's and particularly this office's conviction rate. But what would you say to those people who are outsiders who are looking to come to the city or looking to visit or have family or friends here, maybe looking to move and think, maybe I don't want to go to San Francisco because of this?
Yeah, I think first of all, especially when it comes to violence, this is one of the safest cities in this country, regardless of what those hate mongers are saying. This is a very safe city. The conviction rate to this office in violent crime is very high. In fact, year to date is 90%. Now, I normally do not talk about our conviction rate because I don't like to use our conviction rate as a metric of our performance, because I think our performance has so many other steps, and there's so many other tiers to our work. But certainly our conviction rate today is one of the highest it has been in the history of San Francisco. And it has been like that for several years. And by the way, that's not accidental. That is because the women and men that work in this office are incredible professionals working very hard under very difficult conditions.
I've got another follow-up question, sir. A lot of articles and newspapers have been talking about how this case particularly is going to help or hurt this office. I know there have been plans and discussions for running for re-election in 2019. How do you think this case is going to play in your plans?
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, it's going to be up to the electorate. But I think it seems to me that the people are much more wiser and smarter than we're giving them credit for. I can't imagine that a single outcome of a case that was tried so well, and just because the outcome was not the desired outcome, that is going to dictate the direction of an election. But again, at the end of the day, that's really up to the people to decide, not for me. You have something back.
So my question is, do you think this case wouldn't have caught such a national attention and the political backfire that it created? Do you think the outcome might have been different, even though his status wasn't part of the case?
Look, it's hard to speculate, but let me give you an example. Right across the hallway, at the same time, we were trying a quintuple homicide. I was in that courtroom many times. You know how many times I saw a reporter in there? Once. And I think she was there out of goodwill because we were having a conversation. At the same time, we have a single homicide on the other side. And, the courtroom, they had to give out lottery tickets to see who was going to get in. I think that while it is true that the president certainly has made this to a great extent what it is, I think sometimes we need to, and I'm saying we because I include myself, we need to use a little bit of discipline and not allow simply somebody a madman that is tweeting, dictate everything else that we do. Yes.
The jury came back with a conviction on the felon in possession of a firearm, but acquitted on the other charges. Do you think that shows some inconsistency with how they understood the evidence that was presented? Can you talk a little bit about your evaluation of their
Yeah, I can, unfortunately, because this case is still under litigation. I think that once the whole litigation process is ended, certainly we may be able to have a little more of a conversation, but, you know, we're still trying to understand both the verdict, as to what was found guilty, what wasn't, and what the next steps are going to be. We have a hearing coming up, so we have to make sure that we protect the integrity of the legal process. Yes.
Can I ask another question about the case? And I've heard many people say perhaps the prosecution should have asked the jury to be allowed to pull the trigger, to feel the pull, and that perhaps you would have had a better chance of winning this case.
The judge made a decision. We respect his decision, and I'm certainly not going to second guess him today. Yes.
Have you had any contact from the Attorney General or the DOJ?
The U.S. Attorney General?
Yeah.
No, we have not. I don't think I'm on their calling list. Yes.
I'm sorry to rehash this, but you said, I think you said this was always, from the DA's perspective, an implied malice case, a second-degree murder case. In closing arguments, that was not what came through. It was first-degree murder, express malice. Why wasn't, if that was always the plan, why wasn't that the focus of closing arguments?
Yeah, I'm sorry if I wasn't clear. We went into this case with an implied malice case. We always thought it was murder, by the way, and we don't allege degrees of murder. We tried the case for murder. During the trial, evidence has started to surface that we, and the court, by the way, the judge agreed that he felt there was sufficient evidence there to put the question to the jury. This is not something that we did on our own. This is something that the court agreed that there was sufficient evidence. It was presented to the jury. By the way, this is not unusual. In fact, most murder cases generally get presented multiple theories of a case, and that's what we did here.
Nevertheless, though, the judge is not going to decide what the content of the closing arguments are going to be. So my question is, why wasn't second-degree murder the focus of closing arguments?
I think if you go back to the presentation, you will see that there were multiple theories, and they were all very, very carefully explained. Diana Garcia did a very good job, in my opinion, presenting the elements of a first-degree murder. In fact, she was very quick on that piece. I was there. Second-degree murder, she spent a great deal of time. She's playing involuntary manslaughter and felon in possession of a gun. So I believe that the work that she did was incredible. Obviously, again, we know what the outcome was. And as I mentioned earlier, if there's any blame to go around, it's all mine, because this team did an incredible work.
So I understand that there was sufficient evidence for, to instruct the jury on first-degree murder, but having seen the verdict, if you could do this again, would you change your strategy, or do you stand by your strategy and having them instructed on first-degree murder?
I think you guys are, and I'm sorry, I apologize if maybe I'm not making myself very clear. The jury was instructed in each theory. They were instructed on first-degree murder. In fact, very quickly, Diane spent a great deal of time explaining second-degree murder, and she spent a great deal of time explaining involuntary manslaughter. Okay, so she did all three of them. Anyone that goes around saying that she was only instructing the jury in first-degree murder was not there, hasn't taken the time to read what was said, because that is not the case. The jury was given multiple theories, and by the way, this is not unusual. As a matter of fact, as I indicated earlier, right across the hallway, quite frankly, in other courtrooms during this last few days, other murder cases have been tried. Other cases get tried where we present to a jury multiple theories of a case, because we want to give the jury the option, based on their understanding, their assessment of the evidence, to come up with answers. But going back and saying that only first degree was presented, that's incorrect. That is not what happened.
As you can tell, everybody in this room and a lot of people in the country have an idea about why the case turned out. They have a theory about why the case turned as it did. I'd love to hear yours.
Again, we're in the middle of litigation. This case is not over. We still have a hearing coming up.
Are you going to compromise that by saying how you think it
Listen,
turned out the way it did.
we have said from the very beginning that this is not the verdict that we were expecting.
Right, why do you think it came out the way it did?
I couldn't tell you. I don't know what 12 people did inside the room when they were talking to one another, nor would it be appropriate for me to guess as to what they were saying. That would be a question for the jurors. They have elected not to talk, at least at this point. Perhaps they will in the future. I think that would be a question that you may want to ask them.
You have no,
Not anything that I'm going to say publicly.
Anything else?
Yeah.
Before we go to
You wanna
Spanish?
get it in Spanish?
Yeah, before
Yes,
we
I
go
will
to
do
Spanish.
Spanish. I have a couple more, and then we'll do Spanish.
Any reaction to public defender's plan to appeal the conviction for the unlawful possession in the state of New York?
Yeah, we're, again, because the case is in the middle of litigation, we have to, first of all, we have to see, you know, what their motion looks like, what are the things that they're going to allege, and then we have to evaluate the next steps. Yet another one, or you want to go in Spanish?
No, en español ya.
Okay,
In
so
Spanish?
we'll,
Any other questions in English?
one more question in English, anybody?
Okay, Spanish.
Okay, thank you so much, and we'll do Spanish now.